Hey there nation, welcome to the show. We help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and now it's time for episode 2 of our Age of Mordheim. This is our series of Age of Sigmar Mordheim campaign battle reports, and just in case you're unfamiliar with how the whole game system works, what we're doing is we're using a system of rules that was created by Vince Venturella. He's the YouTuber who does Warhammer Weekly. Him and his gaming group created a rule set, a rule pack that you could actually use to play Mordheim, which is an old skirmish game from the 1990s. It was kind of like Necromunda for Warhammer Fantasy is what it was. It's more skirmish based. You have small groups of fighters that are going into the city of Mordheim, which is also known as the City of the Damned. It's a place that was destroyed by a meteor shower of warpstone and weirdstone, and all this dark magic and riches and all kinds of stuff that can be found there. So what happens is that gangs called war bands of treasure hunters go there to loot the place and also discover the secrets of this place. And this is our second battle report in that campaign series, and this one is fought between my two friends, Smells Like Febreze with the Wild Hunt, which is his sylvaneth warband, versus my other buddy Brother Grimm with the Krimzon Killaz of the Orcs and Goblins. So these two warbands will be throwing it down in a blood in the streets type scenario, which is basically like a straight up warband versus warband fight. Both of them will battle for supremacy and see exactly who wins. So that being said, we're going to play some background music real quick and show you exactly what the warbands look like as well as what they're taking. If you want to see exactly what each of the warbands are equipped with, feel free to pause and take a look at your own leisure. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get this battle report on a roll. Alright, so with that over with, let's go and talk about the scenario rules real quick. This is a blood in the streets scenario. The objective of the scenario is to be the last warband standing. So both these warbands will be fighting on this 4x4 table, and you win this battle report by either completely destroying your enemy warband or routing it. And routing is basically kind of like a bottle test from Necromunda. The idea is that if the opposing warband loses its nerve, it runs away and retreats, and that's the other way you can win as well. And just like with all the other scenarios, there are experience points for this one. You get 1 experience point for each hero or troop that survives the scenario, as well as 1 experience point for the victorious warband leader as well. You also get 1 experience points for each of your heroes who takes out an enemy out of action, and that's just for your heroes only as well. Now, if one of your heroes manages to take out 5 enemies in this battle report, they get what's called a murder type of streak, so they get 2 additional experience points for that. And also, if you manage to wipe out your entire enemy warband before it routs or flees, you also get 3 experience points as well. And that pretty much makes up the scenario rules for this one. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the deployment phase real fast. As you can see, my friends are fighting on a 4x4 table. On the near side of the table is Brother Grimm's warband, the Krimzon Killaz, and on the far side of the table is my buddy who Smells Like Febreze's the Wild Hunt. As you can see, there's a lot of ruins and rubber piles spread throughout, as well as sylvaneth force. If you look on the left-hand corner, bottom left-hand corner, as well as the top right-hand corner, those are the 2 sylvaneth wildwoods are located for this battle report. And the reason why is because sylvaneth warbands get 1 sylvaneth wildwood that they can split into 2 pieces, and they can put it anywhere on the board so long as it's within 9 inches of any enemy deployment or anything like that. And so that's where those forests are located at. So with the overall deployment done, let's go and talk about exactly where each warband is located. Alright, starting with the Krimzon Killaz. Over here on the left-hand side, you have his deployment of the Howlers. Those are 2 Wolf Goblin Wolf Riders. Right behind them is Gaza the Loon. That is his Wolf Rider boss, who's riding on that white wolf there in the center. On the right-hand side, he's got his 2 members of Dim Bloods, which is his 2, what you call it, Black Orc fighters. And he's also got his leader there. I think that guy's name is Papa Shango. That's his Black Orc boss as well. Right behind them, of course, in the very back is his Black Orc big boss. That guy is Ruga the Stuntiflea. That's his general for this one, his warband leader. And to the right, of course, you also have Baron Zamidi, which is his orc big boss. He's kind of hanging out with these orcs as well. And up in the front, of course, you got his 3 goblin fighters, which are called the Ludas. Those are those 3 guys who are armed with spears as well as bows. And then right behind them, they're being led by old Stink Eye, which is their goblin boss as well. And that makes up his left-hand flank. And make up the Krimzon Killer's right-hand side is the Twang Twang. Those guys are the 4 Orc Arrow Boys located on the top of that tower. If you also notice there too, there's also the Nasty Boy. The Nasty Boy is the sneaky skulk, nasty skulker that's in with this warband, and he's right there in the middle of the tower. Not because he's deployed there, but because that way my buddy Brother Grim can deploy that guy whenever he needs to for the battle report. Alright, so let's go talk about the deployment for my buddy Smells Like Febreze. This is the deployment area for his Wild Hunt. As you can see in the very back there, he's got Dirthu, which is his warband leader. He's right in front of that Sylvaneth Wildwood. Right next to him to the right hand side, I believe that's Shyvana the Shadows. That's his Branch Wraith. She's kind of posted right there. That's his warband's magic user. Also on the right hand side, you have Sternbark, which is his tree man that's in his army as well. Up on the left hand side in the front, you have the Troop of Dawn. That's his 2 treekin for his army. And then the right hand side, you have Anya the Ashes, which is his branch nymph, and she's bringing 2 members of the Court of Seasons, which are 2 dryads as well. Pretty small warband, but that's because 2 members of my buddy Smells Like Febrze's warband are actually behemoths and monsters, so that's why it's kind of a powerful list. And that pretty much makes its deployment for this part. So with the deployment phase over, we go directly to the top of turn number 1, and both of my friends roll off for initiative to see exactly who will go first. Alright, so my buddy Smells Like Febreze, he managed to take the initiative on this part, and this overhead shot pretty much sums up his entire turn. He doesn't cast any magic spells because he's not within range of anybody to do so for his magic user, and he doesn't have any real need to cast his command ability yet because he's not really engaged with anybody at that point. So all he really does, he just kind of moves his forces forward, is what he does. As you can see, he advances with both of his treekin right directly into the center of the town. Also on the right hand side, his dryads as well as his branch nymph and branch wraith also run up to that fence on the right hand side as well. He keeps his 2 treemen Dirthu as well as Sternbark located at that Sylvaneth Wildwood, and I think the reason why he's doing that is because he's hoping that my buddy Brother Grim will maneuver his forces away from the Sylvaneth Wildwood on the bottom left hand corner, so that way he can teleport those 2 treemen down there and hopefully attack him on the flank. However, my buddy Brother Grim is also pretty experienced Age of Sigmar player, so he's gone up against Sylvaneth before, so I don't know if that will really work out for my buddy Smells Like Febreze, but that's pretty much what he does for that turn. And since he ran all of his units, there is no shooting for the rest of the phase, and since no one's engaged in close combat, there is no need for a battle shock phase, and that pretty much makes up a very uneventful turn number 1 for the Sylvaneth. Alright, so that takes us to the bottom of turn number 1 for the Orcs and Goblins. This photo is taken after the movement phase. Once again, not much is really happening in their recovery because there's not much need for recovery taking place in the recovery phase. Same thing with the hero phase. Not much is really going on there, so because that, we go directly to the movement phase. And as you can see, my buddy Brother Grim kind of divides up his forces. He starts sending up his Goblin Wolf Riders for the Howlers, as well as the Ludas with the Old Stink Eye, as well as Gaza the Loon. They move up to the center portion right next to that cart on the left-hand side, next to that space between the ruins on the left-hand side, as well as that church on the right-hand side. And then what my buddy does is he then moves up his orcs all the members of his orc war bands, which is the Dim Bloods, as well as his heroes, and he moves them to take place right next to that Sylvaneth Wildwood, which is actually kind of a smart move, because when he does that, he kind of denies my friend Smells Like Febreze from being able to teleport his treemen over to that left-hand flank, and I think that's why he's keeping his orcs there, because he doesn't want my other friend Smell Like Febreze to be able to teleport like that. Meanwhile, on the right-hand side, his arrow boys from the Twang Twang, they just stay exactly where they're at, because there's no need for those guys to move at all as well. So with movement phase over, we go directly to the shooting phase. Alright, during the shooting phase, the only forces that can open fire are Brother Grimm's Howlers as well as Gaz of the Loon, so those three goblins take aim with their short bows, manage to inflict a wound on one of the members of the Troop of Dawn for Smell Like Febreze's warband. So these three can only carry 3 wounds apiece, so that guy only has 2 wounds before he has to roll up on the injury table to see exactly what happens to him, and that pretty much makes it a pretty uneventful shooting phase. And since everybody ran forward, there's no charging taking place, and there's no close combat or battle shock, that pretty much sums up turn number 1 for the Orcs and Goblins on this one, so we go directly to the top of number 2, and my friends roll off for initiative to see who goes first. Alright, so we go directly to the hero phase for the Sylvaneth. My buddy Smell Like Febreze was able to take the initiative. There is no need for recovery phase, so we go straight to hero phase, and the first thing that my friend does is that he activates his command ability, Full Ahead, for Durthu. And in case you're wondering what Full Ahead does, it is a command ability in the game of the Mordheim rules that Vince Venturella created. Instead of taking the command abilities that usually is associated with hero characters from Age of Sigmar, what you actually have is a D66 table where you randomly select what kind of command ability that your commander will have for your warband. You actually roll randomly to see exactly what you have. And for my buddy Smell Like Febreze, his leader rolled up Full Ahead into a special role. And what the Full Ahead command ability does, it allows you to both run as well as charge your opponent if they're within 20 inches of you. And that it has, I think it has a 12-inch bubble is what it has. So not only will it affect Durthu, it also affects Sternbark as well as those Treekin as well. So they'll be able to run as well as charge in the same turn, which is kind of helpful for him because he's got to close the distance in order to engage those Orcs and Goblins because he won't be able to teleport anytime soon. So that pretty much makes it the hero phase for Smells Like Febreze. So with the hero phase over, we go directly to the move phase, and as you can see, most of his forces start running as well as advancing forward. Over in the center of the table, as you can see, Durthu runs forward between the house as well as that barn, getting him ready to enter that middle of the town square. He also moves up his 2 members of the Troop of Dawn. He also splits them up. He sends the one that's carrying the floating wound to deal with the Goblin Wolf Riders on the left-hand side, and he also sends his other member of the Troop of Dawn over to the right-hand side to deal with the Ludas as well as old Stink Guys. That way he can engage those guys in close combat. Meanwhile, on the right-hand side of the table, as you can see, Sternbark moves up, I think, 8 or 9 inches, I believe, up to that fence there. So he's kind of standing right there, taking care of behind there. However, the main advance takes place on the right-hand side. The Dryads of the Court of Seasons, as well as their Branch Nymph, Anya the Ashes, as well as the Branch Wraith, Siobhan of the Shadows, they move across the field as quickly as they possibly can in order to engage, it looks like, my buddy Brother Grimm's the Twang Twang, which is his 4 arrow boys on the top of that tower. So that does kind of put them in a precarious position because they are in the middle of open fire, so because of that, my buddy Brother Grimm will be able to shoot those guys during the shooting phase. But Orc arrow boys, they have a roll up of 5+ in order to hit and then a 4+ to wound, so because of that, the odds are slightly within the Dryads' favor because Orcs are notoriously bad shots. And that pretty much makes it the move phase for Smells Like Febreze. Alright, so with the shooting phase over, we go directly to the charge phase. As you can see in this photo, my buddy Smells Like Febreze charges in his 2 Treekin. The one on the left charges directly into the Howlers as well as Gaz of the Loon, and the one on the right charges directly into the Ludas to engage those guys in close combat. So a pretty standard charge phase for that part. Alright, so we go directly to the combat phase. As you can see in this photo, the Howlers as well as Gazaloon, they remain standing there completely unscathed. And that's because my buddy Smell Like Febreze flubbed his rolls with that Treekin trying to attack. However, my friend Brother Grimm, he rolled out of the boxes. I've never seen so many 6s and 5s being rolled in close combat in my life. What really tipped the scale in the balance of the Goblin Wolf Riders was the attacks that the Wolves had against the Treekin. So because of that Treekin went out of action on that part. Also on the right-hand side, as you can see, the Treekin on the right-hand side, though, had no problem destroying those 3 goblins. In fact, he killed 2 of them, put them out of action. I believe the third one failed his break check during the battle shock phase, and he fled. And that kind of leaves old Stink Eye by himself to stare down the barrel straight at that Treekin. As you can see, we got 2 members of the Ludas who went out of action, so they will need to roll a d6 to see exactly what happens to these guys, to see whether they live or die during the post game. And here's a close-up shot of Smell Like Febrez's Treekin, who will also have to roll up on the series injury table to see exactly what happens to him, because he also went out of action being devoured by Goblin Wolf Riders. And as you could probably see in the Battle Shock phase, it doesn't surprise anybody when this one lone goblin decides to break for it. My buddy rolled a break test to see if this guy would run away during the Battle Shock phase. He rolled like a 5, and because he was outnumbered, because that Treekin killed so many people, it added a +1 bonus. And in this rule pack, if you get a total of 6 for the Battle Shock phase, your guys start running. They run D6 plus the normal movement allowance to get away. So that goblin from the Ludas, he's running for the hills because he just saw his friends get destroyed by a living tree. So with the Battle Shock phase over, we go directly to the bottom of turn number 2 for the Orcs and Goblins. Alright, so we go directly to the recovery phase for the Orcs and Goblins. As you can see for this poor little Gobbo, he fails his break check again. So because of that guy flees completely off the table and gets away from the battlefield. So because of that, he's just off the table at that point. My buddy Brother Grimm is of course one short goblin for his warband. And with that, we go directly to the hero phase. As you can see, my buddy Brother Grimm decides to use his command ability for his Ferruga Stuntiflare, which is the leader of his warband. And for the randomly chosen command ability that he gave for this guy is called Insight Frenzy. And what it does, it gives everybody within 4 inches of the warband leader +1 to their attacks, because as supposed to represent that he's whipped up his forces into a frenzy and all they're doing is hacking and slashing at their enemy. As a result of that too, they also take a penalty to any armor saves they need to take against attacks themselves to represent that these guys are just throwing themselves completely into the melee. So it is kind of important for his what you call his black orcs and as well as his orc to his characters to arm up with additional attacks. At the same time, because these guys are black orcs mainly, they have a pretty good armor save anyhow, so it's kind of worth the penalty at that point. During the movement phase, my buddy Brother Grimm does some interesting kind of maneuvers with his forces. As you can see on the left-hand side, he does move up his Goblin Wolf Fighters into the street between the ruins on the left-hand side as well as the church. That way, that gives him the ability to shoot at his that smells like Febrez's remaining Treekin, and at the same time, also puts him in a good position to charge that Treekin and also engage him in close combat. At the same time, he also drops back Old Stink Eye, which is his Goblin boss, a couple inches back, so that way he can also take pot shots at them as well as not getting worried about being charged up in the next turn as well. As you can see right there in the center, of course, you have his little goblin who's fleeing off the battlefield. We forgot to take that guy off the battlefield, and so that's why he's there. And that pretty much makes it the movement phase for Brother Grimm. So as you can see in this photo, we go directly to the charge phase, and the reason why is because, unfortunately for Brother Grimm, none of the shots from either his RO boys or his Goblin Wolf Riders and Goblin managed to do any damage whatsoever. So because of that, we skip that phase, we go directly to the charge phase. And as you can see in this photo, his Goblin Wolf Riders and the Howlers, as well as Gods of the Loon, they charge directly into the Treekin. Same thing with Old Stink Eye, he also charges that guy forward as well as start engaging. He also decides to pop up the Nasty Boy, which is his Nasty Skulker, so you can see he's popped up right behind that Treekin to get that guy completely surrounded. And so while normally Sylvaneth don't really need to worry about goblins so much when it comes to usual battles, in this edition of Mordheim, it might be more of a risk for Smells Like Febreze, because these goblins have been rolling out of the box for Brother Grimm, and so it'll be kind of interesting to see exactly what happens for this combat. And speaking about the combat phase, as you can see in this photo, these goblins managed to put 2 wounds onto that Treekin for the Troop at Dawn as well. Actually, one of those wounds slipped through because it was a mortal wound that was inflicted by the Nasty Skulker as well. As you can see, the two Wolf Riders from the Howlers got put out of action because the Treekin, of course, has really devastating close combat attacks. However, Gaza, the Loon, as well as Old Stink Eye, the 2 goblin characters, they managed to stand their ground. Same thing with the Nasty Boy there in the back as well. And here's a close-up shot of all the casualties that the Krimzon Killaz have taken so far. We got 2 goblins from the Ludas as well as the 2 goblin Wolf Riders from the Howlers who are basically out of action. So these guys will need to roll up on the injury table for troops to see exactly what happens to them at the end of the post-game. And of course, during the Battle Shock phase, that one last remembering member of the Looters, he fails his panic check, of course, and he just runs off the table. So now all the goblins and the Looters are completely gone off the table. So with that little bit of action done for the Battle Shock phase, we go directly to the top at turn number 3, and both of my friends roll off initiative to see who will take it. So, Smells Like Febreze does manage to take the initiative for turn number 3, and we go directly to the hero phase. And the very first thing he does, he casts a Blessing of Life, which is a spell that his Branch Wraith has. Basically, it's got a difficulty of 5 up to cast, and it targets a unit within 16 inches. When you pick that model within 60 inches, that model automatically heals d6 wounds. And so you can see in this picture here that Treekin for the Troubadour is now back up to his 3 total wounds, which is pretty bad for Brother Grimm because these Treekin can put down the hurt when they manage to hit, and these guys are just little weedy goblins, so things might not be going very well for Brother Grimm at this point. Also, during the same time, during the hero phase, he activates Durthu's command ability full ahead on himself, so that way this guy can both run and charge within the same turn. And that could prove very devastating for Brother Grimm because Durthu is a freaking wrecking ball when it comes to close combat, and I would not want to engage him in close combat either. So with the hero phase over, you can see we go directly to the movement phase. As you can see, Durthu does run across the entirety of the center of the town, so he's right in the middle of the town square, only a handful of inches away from the Nasty Boy, which looks like he's going to be joining up the fray there in the center. At the same time, he also runs with Sternbark across the battlefield, moves up, I think, 8 inches, what he does right next to that pond as well. Now for his Dryads, for the Court of Seasons, as well as Anya the Ashes, which is his Branch Nymph, and his Branch Wraith, Shyvana the Shadows, he doesn't run with those 4 characters. What he decides to do is just move up their normal movement allowance because he plans on charging those guys up against the Twang Twang, which are those 4 arrow boys on the top of the tower there. And that pretty much makes up his movement phase for this turn. And because his entire warband that can shoot pretty much ran the last turn, so they don't get to shoot. So because of that, we go directly to the charge phase. As you can see in this photo, the 2 Dryads from the Court of Seasons, as well as Anya the Ashes, his Branch Nymph, make their charge on the top of the tower to face down the Twang Twang. So now these 4 arrow boys will have to fight these Dryads during the combat phase. At the same time, Durthu manages to also charge in the field to deal with the Nasty Boy as well, so that one lone Nasty Skulker has to fight Durthu as well, and Smell Like Febreze's forces to finally make their charges. So because of that, we go directly to the combat phase for the Wild Hunt. As you can see in this photo, the Court of Seasons as well as Anya the Ashes had no problem putting down 3 of the members of the Twang Twang. The only guy that's left is the 4th member. He's standing all by himself on the top of that tower because he just watched his friends get clawed to death and ripped apart by some Dryads. And at the same time, the close combat between the Treekin against Gaza the Loon, as well as Old Stink Eye, and Durthu versus the Nasty Boy. As you can probably guess, it went pretty much as well as expected. The Treekin managed to take out both those Goblin bosses and then take a wound in return, and Durthu, of course, had no problem just stomping that Nasty Skulker back to his baser elements. And here's another close-up shot of the casualties that the Krimzon Killaz have taken so far. As you can see, Gaza Loon as well as Old Stink Eye, which is 2 of his characters, are also out. The Nasty Boy, which is Nasty Skulker, is out. He's got 2 members of Ludas. They're also out of action as well as 3 members of the Twang Twang, only to roll up on the injury tables. And on the far right-hand side, you can see there's that 3rd member of the Goblins who just kind of ran off the table because he fled. So with the combat phase over, we go directly to the Battle Shock phase. And unfortunately for Brother Grimm, the last member of the Twang Twang failed his Battle Shock test because, for 1, he's outnumbered, and 2, most of his friends got butchered around him. As you can see in this photo, not only does he flee away from the Dryads, he actually flees off the edge of the table as well. So because of that, this guy doesn't worry about taking any serious injury tables, but that also means that one of the orcs that Brother Grimm needs has just fled off the table. So with the Battle Shock phase over, we go directly to the bottom of turn number 3 for the Orcs and Goblins. Alright, so we go directly to the recovery phase for the Orcs and Goblins. As you can see right there on the dice there, because half his forces are out of action at this point, my buddy Brother Grimm has to roll to see if his gang, his warband routes. He does by doing a route test. What you do is you roll a d6 and you add various factors to that d6 roll, and if you hit 6 or higher, that means that your team has basically routed at that point. Because he took so many losses, he would automatically have to go out anyways. As you can see there, he rolled a 6, and so because he rolled a 6, his warband automatically goes out. But even if he had rolled like a 4 or 5, with the losses he took at this point, Brother Grimm would actually have to concede the game because of the losses that he took. So because of that, the Krimzon Killaz have just been routed. Which, ladies and gentlemen, takes directly to the end of the game because the Krimzon Killaz have been routed by the Wild Hunt of the Sylvaneth. So as you can see that, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of goblins and a lot of orcs have been basically taken out of action by the Sylvaneth. There's still a lot of Sylvaneth players still left on the table. In fact, the only loss that Smelled Like Febreze has taken was with his own solitary Treekin. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, since this battle report is over, we go directly to the post game and talk about exactly what happened to each of the war bands at the end of this scenario. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the post game for the Krimzon Killaz. For injuries, we have a laundry list of guys that got injured, so let's go ahead and talk about what happened to them. So for the 2 Wolf Riders of the Howlers, both those guys survived. Same thing with the 2 Goblins of the Looters, they also survived as well. Now for the 3 Hour Boys for the Twang Twang, 2 survived, but one of them died of his injury, so because of that, the Twang Twang has been now reduced to 3 members as well. The Nasty Skulker survived. Gods of the Loon suffered a physical injury, but he got the facial scar injury, which means now that because he's so horrific looking, any mini models he engages with in close combat subtracts 1 for their bravery, because Gods of the Loon looks, freaking scary at this point. And then Old Stink Eye, his goblin boss, made a full recovery as well. For advancements, he did gain a lot of experience points, but not enough to make any advancements, so there's no advancements at this time. So with that being said, we go directly to the exploration phase. My buddy gets 5d6 dice when he rolls it for his exploration, so he rolled 2 1s, 2 3s, and a 5, so because of that, he does find something for the exploration with doubles. In the end, he found 3 weird stones that were worth 70 gold crowns, so he throws that into the treasury, and he also discovered a fountain, which also gave him 2 doses of unholy water. And what that will do for him is if he uses it as like a missile weapon against anybody from Order, they automatically get a mortal wound, which is pretty helpful for this warband. In the end, he went to the merchant Papa Shango, which is his black orc boss, paid 20 gold crowns to recruit additional black orcs. In the end, he recruited 2 new black orcs for them bloods, so because that troop for the warband is now increased by 4. The new record for the Krimzon Killaz is at 0 wins and 1 loss, and their current warband rating is at 97 points, and their max size is now at 23. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the post game for the Wild Hunt. Further injuries, they only had 1 Treekin that went out of action, but that game made a full recovery, so everything is good for that. For advancements, the Troubadour do earn +1 to their saves because of all the damage they cause, so now these Treekin are now save 3, which is really good for them because there's only a few of these guys, and they need all the help they can get. When it came to exploration, my buddy Smell Like Febreze rolled 3d6, and he got 3 5s, so that makes it kind of like really cool because he found something out there in the wilds of Mordheim. In the end, his warband found 3 weird stones worth 70 gold crowns, so that automatically goes to their treasury. In the end, when they're out there exploring, they discovered a wandering soldier, in which this was a Treekin who joins the Troubadour. So now the Troubadour have now increased to 3 Treekin, and they have to pay any recruitment costs for that guy. In the merchant, Anya the Ashes, the branch nymph, paid 20 gold crowns in order to recruit dryads. In the end, she managed to recruit 2 new dryads to the Court of Seasons, so now that little troop has increased by 4. The new record for the Wild Hunt now is at 1 win and 0 losses. Their warband rating is at 73 points, and their max size is now at 13. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap it up for the Battle Report number 2 for the Age of Mordheim. As always, you guys, feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. You guys' input is invaluable as always. Also, check us out on Facebook, Google+, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest and greatest about our hobbies. So far, my friends and I are really enjoying these rule sets that Vince Venturella created for Age of Sigmar using Mordheim rules, so it's a really fantastic system. If you guys want to check out that system, right in the description below this video, I have links that lead you directly to the rules pack that you can download off of Vince Venturalla's Twitter account. You could also watch a couple of videos where him and his friends and his gaming group talk about the rules that they made for the system, so that we get a better understanding how this game works. I highly recommend using this Mordheim system for Age of Sigmar because it's an absolute blast at this point. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that's good to do for this one. We will catch you guys on the flip side. You guys stay classy. Peace out, you guys.